beautiful as they are, these peaks can also be deadly. Warm weather and a weak snowpack making this avalanche season treacherous.
This has been a horrific avalanche season for British Columbia. So for people who are thinking about going into the backcountry, please be extremely cautious.
Welcome back. Well, it has been one of the deadliest avalanche seasons in the Canadian Rockies in 20 years. And while avalanches aren't uncommon in the region, they've been bigger this year, more widespread, and it is taking a toll.
This is the most difficult day of my life.
The group's ski day ended just after noon, an avalanche killing 3 in the party.
It is impossible to put into words the sorrow that we feel and the sadness that is shared by our guests, their families, and all of our staff.
The community of Invermere, it's a little on the quiet side today, and people are, I think, in shock at what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how many times this happens, it is always a shock. And let's just take a moment to think about what actually happens during an avalanche. Imagine an entire mountainside full of heavy snow coming unattached and crashing down on you, burying you alive. It's the stuff of nightmares. But there is a reason that people keep coming back and risking it all. It's exhilarating.
3, 2, 1, dropping. Yeah, buddy.
The thrill of skiing BC's backcountry is as legendary as it is unpredictable.
Oh, tomahawk, avalanche, avalanche.
This footage, taken as an unexpected wall of snow thunders down a mountain, was captured by a film crew out to shoot a promotional video.
I just remember being under with snow getting shoved down my throat.
So far, this winter, a dozen people have died in BC backcountry avalanches.
Our operators are being super conservative. They're not skiing terrain that they would normally ski. You know, even with that, we're seeing avalanches that are moving in fairly low gradient terrain.
So to put things in perspective here, there were only 4 years over the past 2 decades when more than 10 people died in BC avalanches. And again, only 3 months into this year, 12 people have lost their lives. And what's particularly noteworthy is that these deadly slides haven't been just taking place in one region, but all over BC. Like in Valemont, a village near Mount Robson Provincial Park bordering on Alberta, where 2 snowmobilers were riding at the base of a slope when they accidentally triggered an avalanche. It sent a massive slab of snow down onto one rider while the other escaped. Then there were 2 deaths at Potato Peak, southwest of Prince George. In that case, both victims died. One of the victims was later identified as an off-duty member of the local search and rescue team. And then, as you just heard a couple minutes ago, 3 people died and another 4 people were seriously injured earlier this month after a group of heli skiers got caught up in a slide near Panorama Mountain Resort. And as bad as this year has already been, it's only expected to get worse.
We do anticipate that number probably will increase, just given the nature of our snowpack right now. It's inherently weak, and it's just prone to humans triggering avalanches, and that will continue to happen for at least a few more months.
That was Mike Collin. He's an avalanche forecaster with Avalanche Canada. And maybe you had the same question that I had when I was talking to Mike. How can snow be inherently weak? And how does that trigger an avalanche?
Anytime the snow surface is exposed to the sky, to essentially no snowfall, then it's getting weaker and weaker. And that's what happened back in November and early December. We didn't have, we were in kind of a drought condition, and the snow surface was weakening over that whole time. And as it's weakening, it's not bonding with each other. It's turning into what we call a persistent weak layer or a critical avalanche layer. And because that happened for a few weeks of really cold and sort of clear conditions, this layer grew quite large and quite weak. So since then, we've had lots of snow that's built on top of that. That layer is still out there in the mountains near the base of the snowpack. And now we have lots of snow above that. So if we are to trigger that layer very deep in the snowpack, all the snow above it is going to release and slide downhill, meaning we could have very large avalanches. The climate groups are telling us that we should expect to see more erratic weather, so more periods of drought and then more intense storms. And those are really the conditions that favor weak layer growth, is when we do have these drought conditions. So if that's the case, then perhaps we are expecting to see more similar conditions in the near future.
Okay, so maybe you're watching this and you're worrying about your upcoming plans to hit the mountains with some friends sometime soon. And surely there's no comfort to hear that this is still one of the worst avalanche years on record. But it is possible to stay safe if you know what to watch for and if you recognize what avalanche terrain looks like.
So you can head into the backcountry and have a perfectly safe day by staying in relatively shallow slopes, away from big mountainous slopes, and you can have a whole day in the backcountry without even being in avalanche terrain.
What's key here is to avoid the really steep terrain and high elevations where you're going up to the tree line or on top of the mountain. That's where it's easier to disturb those weak layers and where you have a higher likelihood of triggering an avalanche.
Avalanche terrain is really any slope greater than about 25 degrees. So you can trigger an avalanche on pretty much any slope in that sort of slope angle. But also being able to recognize when you're walking through flatter terrain, but it's exposed to potential avalanche hazard above you. So this is where we talk about a full avalanche path that may start very high up in the alpine or at tree line, but then a large avalanche could run all the way down into dense, mature forest, where it's quite a bit flatter, and it could still impact you. So being able to recognize that is also very important.
So something that really stuck out to me when Mike and I were talking was that even for those who are super familiar with the region and feel very comfortable and at home out there in the backcountry, the thing is that this snowpack has changed, right? It's different than it has been for the last several years. And people that may have a lot of experience may not have any experience with this kind of unpredictable snowpack in their lifetime.
Really understanding that it's different and managing it appropriately. And managing it just means that this is not the year for big, high consequence objectives. This is a year to manage your terrain and have really good group decision making.
All right. Well, that's it for us here today at About That. I'm Kieran Oudshoorn. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.